Here to keep the chase going, share information, spread unity, preserve our heritage and our culture. We're trying to achieve something that you just can't catch. We're always trying to find a better way, trying to make better dogs. That's what Dixie Doggers Podcast is. That's who we are.
This episode is brought to you by Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company. Marc Rankin specializes in Brahma and Brahma Cross cattle in Oglethorpe County, Georgia. You can contact him at 407-832-2077. 407-832-2077. This episode is also brought to you by Phil Wilson of UC Hunting Properties. If you're buying or selling land, farms, or hunting property, these folks know land. You can contact him at 678-791-3483, 678-791-3483, or visit his website down below in the description.
All right, everybody, back again, coming at you. We've got a guest this evening. We've been waiting for a while to get this guest on, and really excited to have it. It's going to be a really good, informative episode tonight. This is a veterinarian. This is Dr. Makenzie Rankin. She is, I think she's probably the luckiest woman in the world because I know her husband and her husband knows me. And so, I mean, she's above and beyond blessed. So, so how you doing, Dr. Rankin? How are we?
I'm doing fine. I feel like I'm super prepared this week to do this because I've been driving around in Ryan's truck with all of his cut gear and his dog boxes, taking it to work and stuff. So I feel like I'm really in the mood to be talking about dog stuff. So that's fun.
You got it all. It's all, you got the whole vibe going and everything.
I do. Yeah.
No,
that's real.
That's awesome. So tell all the listeners out there in the hog dog world and whatever kind of dog world they're in, tell them who you are, where you're from, and give us a little history on yourself and how you got where you are.
All right. My name is Mackenzie. I'm originally from North Georgia, Calhoun, Georgia, so kind of close to Tennessee. I have always wanted to be a vet, so I've been lucky in that when I was like in kindergarten or first grade, in my little yearbook, they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, and mine says I want to be a vet. And I got lucky enough to just keep going with that path and get where I am, and get to actually be a vet now as an adult. So that's fun. I think I just started wanting to do that just because I love animals. There was no like medicine or medical drive behind it. I was like, I want to play with animals all the time. And now that's not exactly what I do, but that's okay. So I went to undergrad at University of Georgia, where I majored in animal health, which is a 3-year track to try to get in early to vet school, and I was able to do that. And then I went to University of Georgia Veterinary College for vet school. And so I graduated in 2019. So I've been out for a while now. I'm practicing small animal medicine, although I initially had intended to do mixed animal. Life kind of got in the way of that, happened to me in 2019. So I ended up sticking with small animal medicine for the hours, and I've done that ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that's how is it being married to a hog dogger guy, a guy that runs hog dogs all the time with you being a vet?
Right. It means that my job never ends and that I can come home to literally anything at any moment. And so that's all exciting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like with being a veterinarian and your colleagues and stuff, do you find that the majority of veterinarians support hunting dogs, or are they more against it?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So with the majority of people that get into veterinary medicine, they have that underlying love for animals, right? And so the majority of people out there now also see animals as family. So sleeping in the bed family, like going to the grocery store with them family, right? And so there's been a big shift in how we see animals in general. And I will say a lot of people in general have probably negative thoughts about working dogs. So working dogs and even like cattle dogs and, hunting dogs and just dogs that have jobs, some that are out there with the sheep, those kind of things, guard dogs. People just have different thoughts about that in general now. And so I will say it's sometimes hard working in small animal medicine with the lifestyle that I'm married to, because a lot of people see it differently and don't love it. They don't love, not necessarily dogs having a job, because we are pro dogs having a job, because those are the best behaved dogs.
Yes.
We don't love, a lot of people don't love seeing those dogs that come in injured, knowing how they got injured, right?
Yeah. I got it. And like I said, I knew that was kind of one of those. It's just one of those questions that I've often wondered, and especially like you put it very, very clear. It's the way everything has shifted. The veterinarians that I knew 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it seems like it's when it kind of started changing the most, between 10 and 15. But like 25 years ago, there were so many old school country vets. I mean, I know several of them, they had working dogs, and there's still a few here and there, but I was just curious, as a whole, in from what you had seen, is it more one way than the other? Because a lot of listeners out there, they have to take their dogs to the vet for everything, and I hear a lot of stories. They're like, man, the vet was kind of getting on to me about this or that or whatever, and so I just one of those questions. I'm not trying to put a bad look on it at all, just a little clarity for myself.
Right. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for me to make sure like I didn't put it in a bad light either.
No, it was good.
There are, while there are a lot of vets and maybe assistants in the field that are like, have a hard time knowing what's going on, there are just as many that understand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
it's people in general. It's not just the
it's
professional
the
field. Yes, exactly. Because there's so many fur mommies and fur daddies, and and used to I'd make fun. I'd pick on them and make fun of it. And now I'm a fur daddy. I got all kind of pets and stuff flopping around, and I get it. Though these are not. The pets that I have are strictly pets. They're not working dogs, and I could never put them in that position to do what some of our working dogs do.
Exactly.
So, so there's a definite hard line there on the separation factor of it. So but now
it's been fun. It's been fun, like teaching people the different views that you have on pets and working dogs, like the difference between them, because I've had. And it's one of those, my clinic especially has probably had a big perspective shift with me, and mostly Ron. We're going to thank Ron for that. But I have had dogs come in who bring dogs in that are hurt, right? Like hurt, and they're freaking out about it, and they don't understand. And so they see first how strong these dogs are and how capable they are of getting through things, which we'll touch on later, especially compared to some of the other, animals that get brought in. But also, my favorite is, somebody's like, they don't even let their dog in the house. They don't even let their dog sleep in the bed. And I'm like, I don't either. Like, first, we work in a field where we know sometimes dogs are gross. They're not like you bathe them every single day and clean, like, no, I can't even say kids are clean, but you know what I mean? It's not the same, but, it's just, I just remind them, like, you don't have to sleep in a bed to be loved and well cared for. They are here. If they're here, that means somebody cares. And that's where you focus. You're like, they care. They're here. We're here to help because they show a level of care. It's not like we're finding them in the street. You know what I mean? And being like, well, they don't care about their dog at all. It's different.
Because I mean, they have to care
because it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it costs money and time. It's time and effort on everybody's part, But I mean, I'm sure there's some people that truly look at them as disposable. But I think as a whole, I'd say probably 99% of guys that actually hunt and women that actually hunt as well, they look at their dog as, their companions. Even though they're working dogs, they're still our buddies, that we still care for them.
Right. Yeah.
And we get attached to them. It's not like, well, they're just there.
Exactly.
It's not that. And I've had to, like you said, over the years, you kind of got to educate people and let them know, like, these dogs can take so much more than you could ever dream of.
Right.
And you can't make them do it. They want to do it.
Yeah. That's been a big thing that I had to like get used to too, seeing how excited they are to do stuff that you're like, why would you want to go do that? But that's what they want to do. So.
Oh yeah. It's like, it's some of them. And if you don't work them and if you don't hunt them, frequently, then it's almost like they go through a state of depression.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird to me, but
it is.
I'm lazy. So if I don't have to do nothing, I'm really not that depressed. I'm just like chilling.
That's what I'm saying. I'm okay to lay around for a while.
So, all right. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing here, where we're talking about. We had Nate sent some topics and some stuff to go over since we got your expertise on here, and maybe it will help. Some of our listeners out there. One of the first things we wanted to talk about was, worming regimens and medications on these dogs. Throw that out there on what people can do themselves to be, that's safe to do for themselves and economical. And then what other medications that they need to strictly go to the vet for and to be administered.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And now, thanks to the sponsors and friends of Dixie Doggers. Animal Housing Solutions.
Boars N Broads.
Crockett Taxidermy.
Hardcore Hog Dogs.
Southern Cross Cut Gear.
Ada Y Transport.
4L Kennels.
The American Doghorn Museum.
Unique Hounding Hunting Supply.
Hogbaying.com.
Tuskers Magazine.
Mud Creek Hog Dog Trials.
Right. So I'm going to preface all this by saying, as a veterinarian, to be like compliant, there are certain things that I can recommend, and then there are certain things that I can't, just because, I have to have a relationship with the pets before I do that, just by law. And that's probably a frustrating thing with a lot of people out there that want advice from their vet. I mean, sometimes you do just have to be seen, or you have to have some type of relationship. Think like cattle farmers. They have herds. They know a vet, seen them at least once. That can be helpful. So that's just something to consider with all of this. But with deworming, what I really want to touch on with all of that is there are things that you can pick up over the counter. So I think like Strongit or Pyrantel is something that's out there that can be picked up over the counter. I think I've known a lot of people picking up Panicure or Fenbendazole and able to use things like that over the counter. And there are doses out there for it, and those medications are relatively safe. What we run into with kind of doing that, and unknown if it's necessary, with your pet, like obviously if you see worms, you're going to think like, I probably need to deworm, but we don't always know what kind they are, right, based off that. And the problem with kind of deworming freely without having some kind of discussion with your vet or a little bit more workup with your vet is that we can dose these things wrong, not necessarily to hurt them, but in the future can hurt all of us because we're creating resistance. So if we're not killing these worms off completely, you have these surviving parasites that they'll grow stronger, and the medications that you previously tried won't work the next time. And so then when that stops working, you're going to get these scary resistant worms, and we only have so many dewormers out there to fight them. And so we're creating our own problem in the future for ourselves when we do that. And so what I would recommend in these scenarios is, if you have a vet that you're comfortable with, talking to them, maybe doing something like a group fecal. Like you grab samples from multiple dogs, because odds are if one dog has it, depending on their lifestyle and, you know, how you have them, other dogs probably have the same thing. And so if we're checking intestinal parasite exams just through a simple fecal test, and we find something, then we know it's there, and then we choose appropriate deworming protocols based on what it is, what you've used in the past, and what, you know, the dog's weight are, how many you have, all of that kind of stuff. And so we have run into some dogs that will get and kind of take over, and, you know, Ryan's little group that have had resistant worms, mainly being hookworms. I guess we could talk a little bit about the different intestinal parasites before we get too much into it. So there are all kinds of parasites, right? And so big ones that we're talking about when we're talking deworming are things like roundworms. So those are the ones that look like spaghetti noodles whenever they're pooping them out. So super gross.
Oh
The
my
easiest.
God, we're fixing to eat spaghetti.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have picked a
I'm
different
just
meal.
playing. It's quesadilla. I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool, perfect.
Just being
Well, the next one looks like that. No, I'm just kidding. So roundworms are one of them. Hookworms, which I just touched on. Whipworms are one. Tapeworms. So the first three really come from the environment, and it's from dogs sniffing around in places that other dogs have pooped, basically, or eating from similar areas. And so those are taken in orally. Tapeworms come from fleas, which we can talk about too. But ultimately, they eat a flea, they get tapeworms. Okay. And then the other worm we really need to touch on, because I think it's so important and people don't always recognize, are heartworms, but we'll get to that one later. The first three, the roundworms, hookworms, and whipworms, are zoonotic, meaning people can get them. So you walk barefoot in an area your dog's going to the bathroom, which hopefully we don't do. But, you know, if they're just in your yard and you're playing around, that can happen. Or you're cleaning out kennels and you don't think that you touch poop, but you go grab something, your phone, your food, whatever, and you ingest that, you can get these worms. So kids can get these worms, and so they're gross. And so if we create, you know, again, going back to the resistance, if we're creating resistant ones, that means we're going to hurt ourselves too in the future. Yeah. So big things with those is obviously we want to know if they're there and if we need to be treated, if they need to be treated for them. And that's where those fecal exams can be helpful, because you don't always see them in the poop. And so again, working with your vet is really awesome, because we're able to say, hey, this is what you got. This is how we treat it. If we run into a resistance, because we're going to check after to make sure they're all clear, then we know how to treat that. I've been working with a couple of our dogs on resistant hookworms, and they have to take like multiple medications in a month to just keep their burden low. And that means we don't even get rid of them. We just try to keep them low so it's not contaminating others. Wow. So it's super frustrating. And not to like put blame on anyone out there, because I know our whole goal is to treat our dogs the best that we can, and not to break the bank doing it, because you got other stuff you got to take care of. But sometimes we harm ourselves in kind of trying to guess without like the proper tools with that. So the tests, and then the appropriate medications. Sometimes you just need something stronger to wipe it out of your pack, and then you're good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And some of those might be harder to get. Yeah, so
that's pretty wild there.
I know. And so they're not fun. And sometimes they seem like they'll be easy to fix, but we see dogs all the time super sick, and they're unthrifty. So they don't put on weight. They don't hunt well, because they're not getting the nutrition that they need. Right. And then they're just not a well-oiled machine for you. And so it's not doing much for any of you if you just don't have like that basic level of care with nutrients. So, I mean, without, with those worms, if they're there, they're not getting the nutrients they need. So those are kind of easy fixes, but hard in the sense that you do have to put a little bit more of a kind of get help from your vet in a lot of these scenarios.
Okay. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Because, I mean, over the years, I've seen where, used to, I used a certain wormer, and I mean, it knocked it out, no problem. And then 4 or 5 years later, it's like, man, I'm having to worm these dogs a lot more, or
Right.
more frequently. And it's like, and then it's taking a little bit more, and
Exactly.
it's getting where it's harder and harder. And I mean, it's and like you said, with them being so resistant to it, so we would swap up wormers,
Uh-huh.
and then now we got this whole regimen of worming that we were doing. It's like it was insane. You can run
Yeah.
yourself ragged on it, and I mean, it can get into your pocketbook too.
Exactly. So guessing, even though we're trying to save money, if you're doing a bunch of different ones,
Yep.
then you ultimately waste money and your own brain power.
Yep.
Because that's what we're here for, to know that stuff. I don't, there's a lot of stuff I don't need to know that ins and outs of, and I do not want to know it. But if I can have somebody, maybe there's just a little bit of a fee, right? Like a fecal fee, which I think, depending on where you live, those can range from like $15 in clinic to like $40 in clinic. And ultimately, if you're testing a lot of dogs at once, all in one sample, if that's how your vet's comfortable doing it, then that's not that much in the grand scheme of it.
No, it's
But then,
not.
yeah.
You're going to spend 15 to $40 on about any type of wormer.
Yeah.
Regardless, and if you got a large yard of dogs, like most of us guys that hunt, we've got half a dozen dogs or more.
Exactly.
And so once you start looking at that, I mean, you'll wind up running a bill up real quick when you could just nip it in the bud and just see your vet and get it took care of.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
no.
Yeah. So those parasites are specifically what we call intestinal parasites, which I think is a majority of what people worry about in their hunting dogs when we talk about like deworming regimens. But one thing, and Ryan has been so funny about this, he's been so good about like teaching people about this, because I didn't know about it until I went to vet school that it even existed. But Ryan's over here trying to give me advice on what to talk about, so we're about to kick him out of the room.
Hey, we've already talked to him. Tell him to go and leave you
exactly. Alone. This is you can talk about fires next time you get on this. Yeah. Are heartworms. So heartworms are nasty, nasty worms, and the problem is that they go unknown for so long before, and they cause so much damage until you finally realize that that's what's going on. So heartworms come from mosquitoes. So a mosquito will bite a dog that already has it, will go bite a new dog and transmit that worm to the new dog. In a simple way to say it. Basically, those worms, we're going to go back to the food analogy. We're going to use spaghetti again, so I apologize. But those worms the babies, we'll call them the babies, go to the heart and the lungs, and they grow up to be as big as like spaghetti noodles in those arteries and veins and, and all of those really important things, parts of the body. And they cause so much trouble. They ruin the heart and they ruin the lungs. And dogs aren't going to tell you that they feel funny, so you're not going to know what's happening until it's too late. You might start seeing that they're slowing down, they're coughing, they're just not as, they can't run as long or can't keep up with the rest of the dogs. Like those might be the only signs you have at first. And the only way to know if they have them is to test them with a blood sample, which again is one of those things that maybe one day they'll figure out a way to let us test at home. But for now, you have to go see a vet, whether it's a mobile vet, they'll do that if that helps with cost, or your primary vet. But they're bad. They're bad. And so the only way that we can try to prevent them, because once they get them, treatment is really hard on the body. You have to basically poison the dog to poison the worms so that they die, and it just honestly has a long-term effects on them because it hurts their heart, and then that poison's not good for a dog. The only way to prevent it is prevention. And so every month there are pills out there that you give that work backwards to kill those, what we can call baby mosquitoes, before they get up into the lungs and heart and grow big and cause problems. And so those right now are prescription only. So they have to come from a vet. And a majority of vets out there, you have to know the dog, so at least have seen it once, and have a negative heartworm test, because some of these are not safe if they're positive for heartworms already. But the benefit of that is, your dog is healthy, at least in that aspect.
Yeah.
And those dewormers that are good for heartworms also cover a majority, if not all, of the parasites we just talked about.
Okay, so you can get it all in one.
Exactly. So it links back to, that is your deworming regimen. You give something every month that takes care of all of it. That stops all of that. And so you're not having to go buy other stuff, because it's already there. It's already in all of this thing. If something slips through, and one of the dogs gets it, they can treat with those meds that we talked about, depending on what you need. But majority of dogs that are on these preventions, they don't get those intestinal parasites. So you don't even have to worry about that part.
That's good to know. Because I
Yeah.
really didn't know that if they were on a heartworm regimen, that it would take care of most of the other stuff as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Exactly. So there are some really good ones out there. And, there's so many that fit different lifestyles and different regions, like where you live and what you worry about the most. Right now, our dogs are on Simparica Trio, because those cover roundworms, hookworms, and it covers heartworms, as well as fleas and ticks. So it covers all of the annoying things. The only thing that we run into with that one is whipworms. It doesn't cover that, which, dogs that are hunting like that can, we run the risk of having that. But there are other products out there that cover, all that too. But that's just cool, because it's one pill, and it's pretty inexpensive in the grand scheme of getting multiple pills for that, but it covers all of that.
That's pretty cool.
So,
yeah. I mean, if you can you give us a roundabout what a price would be on that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to look on online.
There's a lot of people that'll be like, well, is it, $5 or $100? But a lot of people, and me, I'm one of them too. I know about what it would cost, but we have so many other products out there, like you said, that are really inexpensive, that can handle the whipworms. So if that's the only thing you got to worry about, man, it wouldn't be bad at all.
Yeah. So just a quick Google looking online, and I'm not going to say exactly where this is being sold, because we do like getting it from places that we know that made it specifically, that cover warranties. We like to sell it from our place or places that we know
That's right.
are linked, because we know where it was manufactured. We know it wasn't some like second or third hand party that got it. Who knows how it was handled? Is it right? All of the stuff. There's a lot of things that come with it. And I know that's a big controversial thing. And with people, they think that we're trying to upsell them. There's reasons for it. We can get into that later if we need to. But it looks like on average it's around $30 a pill.
Oh, well,
in America.
That's not bad. Really?
Yeah, it's not bad. I know it sounds like a lot though when you start saying you have 6, 7 dogs.
Or 40.
And every month. Or 40, you know?
I figure Ryan should probably wind up with, let's just say 30 dogs. I think that's a good number for you guys. 30.
I think I can hardly handle the 5 or 6 that we have now.
Okay, well, never mind then. Ryan, you're not getting no more dogs, but it's over.
Hey, can you hear me? Well, Mackenzie can't say this, but I can say it. She can't come from her mouth. You can also get it from the land down under.
Yeah.
Or and it comes out to be like $6 a pill.
Right on.
But she can't say that.
I cannot say that is legal at all.
Yeah.
And nor do I recommend it.
It's not. So it's not recommended by the USDA. So get out of here, Ryan.
Whoever else is on here, don't listen. He is not. Yeah.
No, he's not qualified, fellas.
Yes.
Cut. Cut the podcast. Right. Cut. See, that's okay. Okay. Now we got that out of the way. So with all the so we got those parasites and stuff covered. Is there anything else just right offhand that you can think of like that?
No, do y'all have more questions about that? I know I mostly just went into depth about what they are, but I
No,
think it's really
that,
important to know and why
I
you do what
mean,
you do.
do you got any questions on any of it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, oh, I do. I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The life cycle. How long is the life cycle of like the hookworms, tapeworms, roundworms, whipworms, strongyles, pinworms, hammerhead worms? Yeah,
Yeah,
not all
they're all
those, but I mean, the main ones, the life cycle.
they're all different, and a lot of them
Yeah.
can live in the environment for like years.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important that in your kennels, when your dogs go to places, if you're going to bay competitions, if you're going to places and they're like, they're staying with other dogs or whatever, you need to clean their fecal material up as soon as you can, especially if it's in soil, because it can live in soil for years.
I got you. That's like the whole the parvo thing.
Yeah.
I've heard so many different things on that, but I've heard that it can live in like 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, we do have like good for like concrete or your home or kennels and things like that.
Yeah.
There are things that can handle taking care of that. It's hard, but it's possible. But the environment does make it harder, mainly because I mean, like, you can just throw a bunch of like bleach or whatever into soil.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Like your chin
it's hard.
spots.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, well, let's go into the diatomaceous earth.
Okay.
Give us give us your thoughts on that, and how it's used, best way to use it, and any long term effects on it.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. I have a feeling that there's not going to be a lot of love for this answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, first, I want to say, and this is kind of not a shameless plug, but I think I told y'all this before we started. I'm in a group of veterinarians that are all moms. And so it's so fun because we have kids, we talk about kids, but we also talk about animal stuff. And so I told a lot of them, like there's thousands of them. I told a lot of them what we were doing with this, and they were so excited, which is something I wasn't expecting to be met with. Like they were like happy to be able to put input. And so a lot of these answers are formulated from everyone's answers. And so this is kind of fun. But one thing that we all kind of had the same thought about with diatomaceous earth is that it's just expensive dirt. It's just expensive dirt. And so there are better ways to take care of things. But as far as taking care of, so how diatomaceous earth it works is it punctures the exoskeletons, so that hard shell of bugs or arthropods, and then it causes them to dehydrate and die. So that's how it works. And so whenever we're thinking of this, we're thinking insects with skeletons, those exoskeletons like spiders and fleas and things like that. It works great, I think, to an extent. It works pretty well if you're doing it in the environment, like if you're doing it around your home because you're having this problem, and things like that. But when we talk about like directly feeding it to animals, there are some ways that it just doesn't work because one, you're thinking like the intestinal parasites that it's actually trying to go after. If we're talking like for deworming, they don't have those exoskeletons, so it's not working the same way with that. And it can also be harmful in that if they're inhaling this, then it causes a lot of inflammation in the lungs and can cause problems down the road, almost like cancerous changes. And so there can be more harmful long-term effects if there's a lot of inhaling. So it'd be difficult for me to want to say, hey, you need to spread this all around your dogs. Maybe if it's your dogs are out of the kennel for like a day or two and you kind of spread it around that and let it do its job for a few days while it's dry, then that's one thing. Once it gets wet, it stops working too. Yeah. So when you're feeding it, it's not really, it doesn't really do too much. And so I think, I don't actually know how expensive it is, but I'm not sure. I don't use it. I choose other ways to take care of it. So I don't really, it's not something that I usually recommend. But I'm also not against using it for like the environment, as long as it's directly affecting the animals or you guys, like people. So.
Well, I know we've used it mainly for the environment, like you said,
yes.
Around chain spots, under the dog houses,
I don't remember the brand, but I get the one that's mixed with the calcium bentonite. I believe that's what it is, and it basically just helps with like mineral absorption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
But I put it in
wear
there,
mask and gloves, and
I shake it up in the dog food so it all sticks to it. That's what I've been doing because I'd read about the issues with the inflammation in the lungs and stuff like that.
So
Yeah.
but like I said, it's one of those things. Just there's a lot of people that I've talked to over the years that use it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to hear whether it doesn't matter if we agree with it or we disagree with it or we want to hear it or we don't want to hear it. It's what we need to hear.
Yes.
That's the fact. We need to hear that just because somebody is selling it and there's a gimmick that goes with it does not necessarily mean that it works. Like you said, it might not be a bad thing, but it's not a great thing that's working real good, in certain areas. Oh, I don't know what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, y'all hold tight for just a second. See what's happening. She got mad and just said, I'm hanging up. I don't know what the world. It showed I had a missed call. There we go.
Hey, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
I don't either. It showed that I had missed calls from you. Like it was trying to call me at the same time. I don't know.
It did something that said like Wi-Fi calling enabled or something. I don't know. That was weird.
Yeah, I have no idea. My phone was laying down there. I was like, what in the world? I was like, well, she didn't want to hear that. She's mad now. She's like hanging up. She's like, now. But no, like I said, just certain things we need to hear the full truth of it. Because I had the guy that kind of started me in the hog hunting stuff. He was a firm believer in the pour on ivermectin, and it worked for everything. That's what he said, like 100%. It didn't matter. I had a dog that had a couple hot spots on it, right? And I kept telling him, I was like, I think these are hot spots. He took and just soaked that poor dog from his head to his tail and just rubbed it in. Dog was just hollering, because it was burning him.
Yeah.
And I will say, about 5 or 6 days later, they were dried up and gone. But it was like, could there not have been a better way to do this?
Could have been a more comfortable way.
Yeah, he just burn them off. It's like we just dry them up.
I mean, it worked. And so sometimes it's really hard to argue with some of these things that come in the clinic and people, they do. And there is definitely a time and place for different therapies. I mean, we all know, like with the COVID thing, everybody's talking about ivermectin. Like, I mean, there are thoughts out there and there are different uses for different medications. And maybe we don't know all of them. Like even me as being in somewhat of the medical field in vet med, like, there are medications that we use for certain things that we can use for 10 other things, and they work. And so, with that, I was going to say ivermectin is actually, it can be used for some mites as a pour-on treatment. So it
we still use it. To this day, and that's one reason why. Because like he was using it as a dewormer, and then, you just have to know him. He's one of those guys. Great guy, but like he's like, this is do it, My dad was one of those guys with the old kennel dip stuff. Remember Happy Jack still makes it, I think. You just mix it up, put it in a 55-gallon barrel, and that worked for everything. Yeah. And then my Uncle James, he's my great uncle, he was burnt motor oil and sulfur.
I was about to bring that up. It
works. It works.
Yeah. There's been some stories about that. I haven't been out or I haven't been in the vet field as long as, obviously some people have to hear some of these stories that we're trending away from that. Also, I'm not working in a more rural area where it probably still happens, but I mean, there are stories about it. And again, sometimes, and I think a lot of it's coincidence, I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of it's coincidence that things work out.
It is.
But it's hard to argue when people have seen you do something, it gets fixed.
Well, we were talking not long ago about the dogs getting snake bit. Benadryl, and listen, I don't want to get in depth with that, because there's so many variables, But
Right.
there have been several times where I've had a dog bit, give it Benadryl, it's fine. Dex, same thing. And I've had
Yeah.
other guys do it. Did that fix it? I don't know, but it made me feel better. I felt better about
Yeah.
it. So it's one of those deals where it's like, did it hurt the dog? No. The dog might have got a little sleepy and took him a nap.
Honestly, and that's a big important thing. It's just do no harm.
Yes,
You know,
that's right.
not hurting the dog. Does it always work? No. As long as we're not picking a harmful thing to practice and just guess at, then sometimes you just gotta let it be. You just gotta let it be.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So what are with saying that, that'll lead right into the next topic that we got kind of talking about, if it's not doing any harm, it's, no big deal, no harm, no foul. So what are the biggest mistakes that you see people making today in just the general care of their dogs? What are the biggest mistakes that they're making? I mean, what are they doing?
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that the biggest mistakes is that we're not treating them, and this is going to sound so opposite of what I as a vet would normally say, but we're not treating them like the vital equipment that they are. So we're putting so much emphasis. Yeah, we're putting so much emphasis on our collars, our trucks, our side-by-sides. Like, we put maintenance into all of them, right? Like, we're focusing so much on taking care of them. And then we're like, but we're going to do something with the dogs when they need it. And that's like the total opposite mindset that we should have. And it goes into humans too. Like, a lot of us only go to the doctor when we're sick versus let's take care of ourselves so we don't get sick. And so I think number one, the biggest mistake is just not taking care of your dog and your stock and what you have. And there's so many ways. Yeah, I mean, that is, and there's so many ways to do that. But I mean, like, I see so many people spending money on like the stuff we just talked about, supplements, even things like that. But don't remember that, like, maintenance, having them checked up, doing these simple things like a heart rhythm test to make sure their heart's not affected by something preventable. Vaccinating them so they don't get sick when they go out, because y'all are traveling all over the place. Y'all are around so many, and maybe your friends' dogs you trust. You're going out with friends' dogs. You don't know these dogs.
That's right.
You don't know what they have, and they could easily pass something along that hurts your dog, and hurts all of your dogs. And so we want to keep them around as long as we can. Obviously, there's chances they get hurt in the moment, and there's not, something you can do about it. But think if they just got something like leptospirosis or, God forbid, rabies, because I think people forget about that one. They get that. And that was preventable, Yeah.
It really is. And that's something that it happens more than people realize, is that rabies, there's like guys that go out every day in the world, and we go out and hunt and run dogs. We don't ever deal with that stuff, or do we? Because it does happen. Every one of us knows somebody that's dealt with it in some form or fashion. And a lot of us are guilty of it, is not getting rabies shots.
Yeah.
Now, we might have shots for everything else, but we didn't get the rabies shot.
Right.
Some states require it, though. Correct?
It is required by law. And ultimately, if something were to happen, y'all are traveling and somebody pulls you over, you don't have a rabies vaccine, you can get fined. And so that's like the least of our worries, right? Is money, but not really. I mean, money is money. If your dog bites somebody, say you're out hunting, you have somebody, again, maybe a friend of a friend, your dog bites that person, they have every right to be upset. It's reported. Your dog is not up to date on rabies. There's only a few ways out of what comes after that. Because if there's any chance a person gets rabies, we got to take it serious. Your dog could be euthanized so it can be tested. That's the only way to test for rabies. I need everyone to hear that. Yes. You can't test your dog for rabies. Your dog will not survive if it gets rabies. You will not survive if you get rabies. So important, so scary, but so real. But the only way to know is to euthanize them. And so you have to test them after death for rabies. And so potentially the other option is quarantining them for months and months if they've never had a rabies. And that's a lot of money too. And so at that point, is it worth doing that. And then, it kind of comes back to letting them go so that that a human is safe.
Yes. And that's the first time I ever dealt with that, I had my nephew got bit. No, it was my brother-in-law when he was really young. Mikey got bit by a neighbor's dog. And he went to the hospital. And next thing I know, I got a phone call and they were like, "Is the dog still there?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's right down the road." And they were like, "Okay, can you go ahead and do him in and cut his head off and bring it to us in a box?" I said, "What?"
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, this is Walker County, Alabama. We're a little bit different.
Well, I mean, it's just a different way to do what would have to be done.
Well, and this was the doctor at the. This is not getting any better. This was at our ER. And he was like, he said, I was like, "Dude, I can't do that." He was like, "Well, what's wrong?" I was like, I'll go to jail. He was like, no. He said, "That's the only way we're going to be able to test this thing." And I was like, "Listen, you're going to have a sheriff or somebody come out and do, that's normally what would happen, but not in this case." Oh, Dr. such and such up there, we're not calling no names. He was like, "Well, just go ahead and put him down, cut his head off, put it in a box." He said, "But put it in a garbage bag, wrap it up so it's not, people can't see it,
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it is a real thing. And it's pretty wild. I had to have a dog quarantined years ago, and it's expensive. Very expensive. And so make sure you get your rabies shots.
Yeah.
Get some vaccinations.
Yeah, and we can talk about it if we talk about vaccines later. But there are clinics that you can do that. If you can't, I mean, I encourage you to find a regular vet so that when something happens, you have help, and you have help just to talk about your I'm going to call them a herd, but not, all of your dogs. Like people, there are vets out there that are willing to work with situations like this. Maybe not everyone, but I mean, it's a real thing and will help. So if you, it's great to have that relationship, but there are vaccine clinics that are inexpensive. You get what you need. Your dog is protected. You save money, and you're where you need to be legally and for preventive care. So just something to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and I never really paid attention to how many of the rabies clinics and stuff like that there are, but we have them local here all pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, free rabies clinic today.
Yeah. So, or they're like $10 because I've done those. And
I say free rabies clinic. I don't know if it's free or not. I might need to check on that before a bunch of people show up.
I mean, they may have some. I would encourage that just so we know everybody's safe.
Yeah. And I think one thing like around here, if they do a free, I swear there's one down in Oakman.
I'm pretty sure the high school has.
Yeah, the high school has them in their free.
Yeah, like the 4-H club probably or something.
Yeah,
something like that. FFA. Shout out to Oakman High School. So that's where all the champions are made, right there somewhere. I don't know, but no, like while we're on that, do you want to go on into the vaccines, the different vaccinations?
Oh yeah, I think we can do that. That's perfect.
Right,
so
we'll just roll into them.
Perfect. So vaccines start. First, how they work is, we all know how you get a vaccine. It's a poke. Dogs, sometimes they care, but hunting dogs typically they don't care. It's a tiny little needle. But you're trying to trick the body into thinking it's fighting an infection with this vaccine. So you're giving a form of it. So I don't want everybody to get scared because we're thinking, we're giving these viruses and these diseases to our dogs. Mm-hmm. We're just doing something that simulates an infection. So then the body tries to react to it, then understands what that is in case they ever get exposed to it. So then it'll activate the immune system and the natural defenses once, if it ever gets exposed to parvo or rabies or lepto or whatever. And so that way your dog is protected. A lot of times it lessens the symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean they won't get these things, but it makes them survivable or just helps them get through it safely, right? Mm-hmm. So as puppies, we rely a lot when they're super newborns for the first few weeks of life. We rely on mom to have passed on her antibodies from these previous vaccines. So when you're breeding, it starts with you should make sure the mom and dad are healthy and that they've had these vaccines, specifically distemper parvo, rabies. Those are the specific ones as far as passing down, mostly distemper parvo. But they need to have those, as well as obviously be healthy in other ways before you want to breed them. But after that, at some point, these maternal antibodies wear off. So then we start vaccinating, maybe closer to 6 weeks of age for these puppies, for distemper parvo. And then from there, it's recommended that you do it every 3 weeks until around 16 weeks of age.
Okay.
That seems like a lot of vaccines as far as the distemper parvo front, but the point of it is, if for some reason those maternal antibodies fail to help these puppies, you're trying to slip in and catch it. So it's not how many boosters they actually get. It's just in 3 weeks or so, that last vaccine that you gave, might not be in that system anymore. That gives you 3 weeks for the maternal antibodies to potentially go away. So you give it again. So you're just trying to catch that sweet spot of no more antibodies to prevent them from getting the rise that they need from these vaccines. And so you don't let them get sick on that in between, right? Because distemper is a nasty disease.
Oh, yeah.
Parvo is a nasty disease, and we all know that.
Yes.
So we do that until they're like 16 weeks of age. And then from there are options for every year for distemper parvo or every 3 years. And I highly encourage to do it every 3 years, because if you can get less pokes into their lifetime, less money, less, worry about having to get it. And just in general, like over vaccinating, I won't say that's a thing, but if you don't need it because you don't need it, why give it?
Yeah.
So there are some animals out there, because it's not it's not a one size fits all for everyone. Some animals need it more frequently because their bodies just their immune system just doesn't work as well. And so that kind of might be if you have a dog that you're more worried because of their immune system, or some of these black and tan dogs like Rottweilers, they tend to not really mount a good response to these vaccines. And so we might vaccinate them more frequently.
Okay.
But that's the typical, like every 3 months after they're a year old, is what's recommended. So that's for distemper parvo. Rabies, once they're around 16 weeks old, we'll give that rabies, and that's once every 1 or 3 years, depending on, some state laws are different. Some states don't allow 3-year vaccines, but if yours does, I highly encourage that too. If they ever get into a tussle with an animal that you're worried about rabies, ultimately that bite, if it did have rabies, is expected to trigger the immune response from that last vaccine. So we ultimately should be covered, but we like to give that booster vaccine if we are worried at all about that too. So they might get an extra one there. The last, or not the last one, but another one that's really important for these hunting dogs is leptospirosis. Are y'all familiar with lepto?
We somewhat.
Kinda.
We went over a little bit with a couple of different times with a couple of different people.
Yeah.
Monica's give me a good rundown on it. I've read some on it, but go ahead and lay it out there so all our listeners can be up to date, and I myself can be up to date on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So it's basically it's bacteria that is transmitted via wildlife urine. So we're thinking like deer and raccoons and possums and squirrels and things like that are running around in both your backyards and everywhere you guys hunt.
Deer.
So yeah, it's gross. It's not fun. It's super dangerous because even though it's a bacteria, and ultimately if you catch it fast enough, it can be treated. It also is hard to catch. It's hard to know if they have that because it can show up as just general like illness signs. It can look like kidney failure. It can look like liver failure. It can look like both. And so it's kind of like a jack of all trades. And so it's not fun to try to chase down. So the goal is to try to prevent it. Obviously, it goes back to the whole prevention thing, to try to prevent them from getting it. And it's not the perfect vaccine. They're still susceptible to getting lepto. There's so many different types of lepto out there. We only have so many vaccines to kind of cover those. But you're doing your best. And so that one, usually you start around like 12 weeks of age. You do it, you booster it twice. And so once in 3 weeks later, and then try to do that once a year. So that one is one that I would recommend once a year.
Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was kind of up to date on what it is and some of the effects and stuff of it, but like on the shots and stuff, still something new to us, and we need to look into that heavily.
Yeah. It's just, it's scary. Sorry, I was just saying it's scary.
If we got to deal with, if it's coming from like urine from deer and stuff like that, I think like that these people need to realize, especially deer hunters, they need to realize that deer they're violent and dangerous animals. And we don't recommend that there should even be really a deer season. And we can hog hunt all the time. If you let us hog hunt year round, you won't have to worry about lepto from deer.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? You won't even be out there with it.
Exactly.
Just throwing that out there. It's just a thought, So, I mean, it's how it is.
We've had some pretty gnarly injuries from deer too.
Yes.
From dogs and deer, and not even hunting dogs. Like
I was thinking, say not blood tracking dogs, just regular dogs. Deer.
No, literally, like there was a deer that attacked a dog in a neighborhood. A neighborhood.
I'm telling you, these are violent animals.
They are. It stomped that dog, and it had to have it almost looked like a hog dog that come in after.
Jesus. Listen, y'all, listeners, I hope y'all are paying attention.
We
want to get a petition started. I mean, the National Hog Dog Hunters Alliance program has got to get started so we can get something in Congress to get rid of these deer. They're dangerous, man.
I'll get some picket signs started.
So no, that's a good thing to know. Like I said, that's one of the things that are that's not spoke about as common as like parvo or distemper,
Right.
And it has like you said, it's pretty gnarly too. We talked to Jacob Zachary the other night, and he was talking about what was his name? It was that Canada ryegrass. Mm-hmm. It was basically a grass seed that can get in your dog, and it can migrate all the way through its body. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, grass-ons, that is foxtails. That's like such a fun, not fun, it's not fun, but it's such I think a common topic because they go anywhere. Like you have dogs that are out sniffing and they'll get up in their nose and you'll have all kinds of nasal problems for weeks to months. You're like, what is going on? And then you finally get a scope up there, a camera, and you're like, there's a freaking grass on just sitting in there, and you pull it out and the dog's perfect. Yeah. They've got eyes, they'll migrate through. There's been random places in the abdomen because it gets poked, and it's somehow how do you get into the actual abdomen? And I don't know, that stuff's crazy.
Yeah, it blew my mind when he was talking about it. I was like, how come we don't know more about this? It's right. People that run dogs all the time because we're always in these fields.
Always, yeah.
So I'm like, I'm positive our dogs have dealt with these, and we might have treated it for something else because, of course, we're at home and we're trying to avoid going to the vet. You already know the story, and so why not just take the dog to the veterinarian?
Yeah, I think, maybe we can save some time and effort on your part. Maybe there's a little more money up front, but you don't have to worry. It's not you anymore.
That's right. Well, I seen a thing the other day on TV I was watching, and it was Dr. Phil. It was a commercial. And they were like, this is our last resort. We've done everything that we can do. He's like, well, why'd you come here? They were like, you're the last hope. He said, how come you just don't come to me first? He said, how come I'm not the first hope? And I was like, you know what, Dr. Phil, that's pretty good, buddy. That's right. Okay, so we got the vaccinations. We went through the worming regimens and made some of the medications and stuff. Let's go into the diet of the dog.
Okay.
What's your diet for a good working dog?
So there's not really one size fits all for any of the dogs that are out there. Because they're all obviously so different. They have different needs. Your older dogs might need, maybe they need something with more calories, more protein to help keep it on, keep their weight on and keep them going. Whereas your puppies need a puppy specific diet. Your pregnant dogs should probably go on a puppy diet so they get the right calories. There's so many things out there that really depends. But as a general rule, it really is what works best for you, your wallet, and your dogs, I would say. Okay. There's a lot of foods out there that are marketed in ways that you get like, oh yeah, this is what I need, and maybe they're outrageously priced, but you just kind of feel that like, no, this is the best for them. But sometimes that's not really the case. In school, we had this. We had a vet. One of our teachers, our professor, she was like, animals need nutrients, not ingredients. And that was like a chant that we would do. It was so funny in our nutrition class. But it's so important to know that, I mean, in somewhat of a sense, it matters kind of where those nutrients come from, but overall, it doesn't. We know dogs out, and these dogs are not wild dogs, so this isn't going to be perfect. But, dogs before they'll get their nutrients from whatever they need to get their nutrients from. But the most important part is just that it is a nutrient-rich diet. And so when we're looking at these, it doesn't necessarily matter what the ingredient list is, right? Some people will see, byproducts are bad, but ultimately, I think we're all misguided as far as what those are. Mm-hmm. It just means it's not like the actual meat part, but it is other organs and other parts of the animal that that animals do eat, right? So it's okay. Basically, whenever we're thinking about diets, there are some guidelines that I tend to follow. So there's actually a list out there. It's called the Wasava list, and it's just a list of diets that are appropriate and have been known to meet the standards to provide the nutrients that certain stages of life need for dogs. And so it's called the WASAVA list, the Wasava list. With that being said, what I usually talk to people about, and, again, it might be one of those weird controversial things. Yeah. There are newer diets out there that we just don't know that much about. They haven't been around that much, and they can cause maybe more harm than good. And so there are bigger companies that have been around for a while that make kibble that these animals do well on. And I just don't see why you would change something that it works well. Yeah. Y'all answer me this. Do y'all make your dog's food, or do you use kibble?
Both.
You do. So you'll so what do y'all do when you make food? Do y'all make it raw, or do you just you'll put chicken or you'll put something in with your other food?
So typically if I'm going to feed it, unless it's during the summertime, I'll feed some raw, or I'll freeze it and then feed it. Mm-hmm. But usually during the winter, I'll usually make a soup. Of course, I don't put no bones in it. I don't want no cooked bones because they'll splinter, something crazy.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, no, and that's so true. Please keep doing that and encourage others not to do that.
Yeah. I was like, if you're gonna give them a bone, give it to them uncooked, please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, the cooked ones just mess them up.
Yeah, I was thinking about trying to figure out how to rig up something where I could just take all my scrap bones from a deer or a pig and I guess get a sledgehammer or something and bust them up so I could run them through a grinder so that way they could just get extra calcium. I don't know if it ground up real fine, basically into bone meal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's fine, and that's the safer way to do it. Yeah. So they're not getting shards.
That's the redneck way.
Oh yeah, I just try to break it down, and plus, when the smaller you break it down, the faster it cooks. So if we take a whole pig or something, cut it up, I'll run it through the grinder, and then put it in there. I might mix some rice, I might cook some rice, or I might cook some oatmeal or something like that. Mix some broth in there so they got some salt, some sodium.
Yeah.
Try to mix some organ meat in there so they're getting their other minerals and vitamins and stuff. If not, just putting vitamins and mineral supplement in there.
Mm-hmm. They've done extremely well this past year.
Yeah, but a lot of times awesome. I'm either feeding kibble that day, or I'm feeding soup. Sometimes I'll mix them, but I'm usually either doing one or the other.
Got it. Yeah. And whenever you're thinking of back to humans, mm-hmm. everyone kind of manages on their own diet. So I won't say that I'm super healthy, but I eat a lot of McDonald's, and I eat a lot of probably, not the same as Ryan would choose to eat. He'd probably like to eat something healthier. And a lot of people think like there's things like that out there with their dogs too. There are dogs that live on diets that we might not consider the healthiest, but we see them living 17, 18 years, on a kibble, like not to poke fun, but I mean, a lot of the big things, like somebody just talks about Old Roy, like one of the cheaper dog food brands out there. But I've seen ancient dogs that have lived their whole life on the Old Roy that look healthier than some 5-year-old dogs that come in on these boutique diets.
We feed,
right? And,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We feed Sport Mix 2420. What do you have any opinion on that mix?
I don't do what? So Ryan just mentioned I like the approved ones. I like to stick with those foods that are on that Wasava list, but also
I didn't know if it'd be on there or not. I haven't looked at the list.
Yeah, I actually haven't looked. I need to look at it. I'll get back to you to see, because I think Ryan's talked about that one too. But with those, there's also an important thing is to look for something called an AFCO statement. So the AAFCO, more letters, so fun. But there's a statement on there that should say this food meets the nutritional requirements as set by AFCO, which is like the basic requirements for the foods to do what they're supposed to do, to allow them to get the nutrients that they need to survive.
Yeah, I've seen it on there before.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that used to be one of my big go-tos. People's like, what do I feed them? I want it to be AFCO certified. And now, I mean, some of it has changed. Like grain-free diets are no longer recommended because there's a link to some of those. Yeah, those lentils.
Yeah, I laughed at that from the get-go. I'm like, are you serious? Everybody's like, if it's got corn, I can't feed my dog that. I'm like, is it allergic to corn?
Yeah.
Does it have an allergy? And they're like, well, if it's got corn, I'm not feeding my dog. It'll kill him. I was like, oh my God.
It's a filler. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, no, turns out it's actually okay. And there's not very many dogs allergic to wheats and corns and stuff out there.
Yeah.
But there's been a link to heart disease. And so, a lot of it comes with it are these newer diets where we're trying to humanize the dogs. And so we are feeding off of what owners like, because there's a lot of people out there that avoid grains in their own diet, which a lot of people need that for their health, but they're people.
Yeah, that's they need that for different. Their health.
It's different, and so you have to be cautious of that. So I like the AFCO certification. I like to avoid grain-free diets unless otherwise recommended by your vet, because maybe your dog is different and needs that. And then I like to pick from, if I'm going to do kibble, I'd like to pick from some of the ones that have been around that have had studies done, that have had vets, looking at, a nutritionist looking at their feeds to make sure they're good. So I'm thinking like Purina is a big one. They also have veterinary prescription diets, which are different, and you would need your vet to want, your dog on that. But Purina, Hills, Royal Canin, those are big ones that maybe are, some of them a little more expensive. Purina has multiple different lines. So you have your Pro plan where it's more pricey, but then you have, you just regular Purina. I think Purina dog chow, puppy chow. That's what we've been feeding a lot of the puppies here. I'll do Purina puppy chow because I know it's a good company. And so even like Pedigree is another one I think that we forget about, but it's been out for a long time and it's proven that it's done a good job. So I just like to stick with the ones that I know as far as that goes.
Well, they're tried and true. I mean, they've been around for decades.
Yeah.
And you can't stay in business for 30, 40, 50 years if you have issues. It just it won't happen. It just don't work. And so I agree with you on that, like as far as the kibble stuff, but I think, like you said, even if you're not actually trying to humanize your dog, you get caught up in these the new latest greatest thing.
You do.
It's so easy. Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in it. So just got to watch yourself with that. And just try to help your wallet, because some of this, it's just you're overpaying for food that half the time these dogs don't need or are potentially harmful. And then some of the super super cheap brands, or some that aren't like certified and aren't specific and aren't made to
meet those nutritional needs, those might be the ones that you might be feeding and your dogs stay thin. You have to feed an enormous amount for them to keep weight on, and they're pooping all the time,
Yes.
because it goes literally straight through them. And sometimes that's like your indicator. You're like, well, you're not really getting what you need out of this. You just kind of see out the other end. So,
That's
yeah.
I pay attention to the K calories
That's perfect.
per cup.
Yeah.
I try to really watch that. No matter how much the feed costs, how many calories are you getting per cup? Just to kind of look at it. And I don't, like you said, whatever the ingredients are, that's all well and good. I need to know how many calories we're getting. What kind of energy am I putting in here?
Exactly.
So this dog can burn it off. How's this dog going to hunt for us? Is it going to be able to stay out there and maintain, the hunting speed that we require or that we need? Is it going to be able to do it all day? And
right.
we've changed feeds, and the dogs, they held up well. I mean, they look great. Their coats look good. They had plenty of energy on the chain. But when you took them off and they went to the woods, it was you could tell the difference.
Yeah.
They didn't have the duration,
Yeah.
So that's one reason why we try to stick with something. We like making as much of our own feed as we can.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I was about to say, like, kibble is for me, who I hardly want to make. Well, I probably don't make dinner. Ryan usually does it. Like I said, I'll pick up McDonald's. But for the dogs, I'm not about to come home and make food. And props to anyone out there that does that, because ultimately, if it's balanced, then that's wonderful. It's not like there's any preservatives. What they're getting. Again, ingredients aren't necessarily the most important. It's the nutrients. So I would encourage anyone that wants to make it to kind of look into what they need. And there is a website that's free. Granted, they sell some supplements to try to help you with your diet, but it's called balanceit.org. And it's specifically, you put everything that you want to put in your dog's diet, and they tell you what you're missing.
Oh, okay.
So
that's pretty cool there now.
Yeah, it is. And so that's helpful, because y'all are talking about making it, and I think it's great. If you're not necessarily supplementing with a kibble, and which y'all kind of are, but for those that don't want to do it that way, you just got to know that there are really important things that they miss out on it. They'll be sick, they'll hurt. And so they need that help.
Got you. All right. Speaking of being sick or hurt or something like that, for all of us guys and gals out there that hunt, a lot of times we get injuries in the field on our dogs do. Can you give us some help on some first aid? Administering first aid to your dogs in the field, not performing, open heart surgery or, trying to replace a kidney or none of that on the tailgate, guys. Don't do that. But in order to get your dog stable, save your dog's life, and get it to a veterinarian,
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Perfect. Do y'all have specific situations that you want to talk about that y'all run into you feel like the most?
Heat stroke. Punctures and cuts. That's going to be probably number one. Would be punctures and cuts, and then dealing with the infection if you have to deal with that.
Right.
So the punctures, cuts, lacerations, anything like that, and then heat stroke, and then anything for broken bones.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm going to start with a story for the puncture thing, because I want people to recognize that a small hole can do so much more damage than you think.
Okay.
Ryan's over here staring at me too. He's probably got like 6 examples, and some of them is what we're going to talk about. So, the story starts off with Pete. I don't know if everyone knows. Stinky Pete, Ryan's dog. I was at work. I think it was like a random Wednesday when this man walks in with the dog and saying, "Oh, Pete, he kind of got cut. We were in the swamp and he kind of got cut, and he just was limping a little bit." And I was definitely in my mode of, I got client pets to take care of. I'm getting through this. Let me see him really fast, and I need you to get out of here. So fault one, me. I messed all of this up. Just to, be completely transparent. But he comes in with a puncture wound, a couple, one kind of like right in his armpit area, and then another one in his groin. So, that nice little skin flap right between the back leg and the stomach, right there. So he had a puncture. Yeah, I think a lot of dogs get hit there.
Yeah.
He had a puncture there. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, yeah, it's just a puncture. What do I normally like? What do most hog doggers or most people do if you're not gonna go the full 9 yards with it? Is antibiotics and pain meds, right? Like that's your big thing.
Yeah.
Well, that was mistake number one. I need everyone to recognize that puncture wounds can be deadly. And that's that. You think like one little tiny hole is not a problem, but it creates a whole rolling like Mass Effect. So specifically in Pete's case, I failed to flush that wound. And so a big thing when you have wounds is you got to get that bacteria, any debris, whatever, you got to get them out. And so usually what we recommend in the perfect setting, right, when they get there is you're gonna sedate them and you're gonna flush them and you're gonna explore these wounds to see how bad they actually are. Does it go into a body cavity, like a chest or the abdomen or something like that? And if not, you flush. We say the solution to pollution is dilution, and that's like just a ton of fluids, right? Just keep on flushing until all that stuff is out. And then, from there, again, this is not anything that anybody needs to know. You treat accordingly, and then you move on. Pete got an infection so bad that he ended up getting septic and almost passing away within 2 days. So the first day I came out, his skin was like he had a huge swelling. It had abscessed. So I tried to flush it then. He was on antibiotics already, and he was on appropriate ones. But then by the next morning, he's not eating. He's not wanting to move around. He's sick. I was to the point of worrying about like that I was going to have to let him go. And I was strongly encouraging Ryan to like, we might need to euthanize him. So it was bad. And this was all starting from a puncture wound. So just where I'm getting with everything. But ultimately, he survived. He lost a lot of skin in the process. A lot of bad things happened after that. And that could be a whole nother story for another day. But with punctures in the field, the steps that you're going to take, depending on what you have going on, is you got to stop bleeding if there's bleeding, right? That's like the number one thing. If there's bleeding, pressure is important. If it's in the neck and there's bleeding, if it's, on a leg and it's close to a big vein or artery, artery would be super scary, but pressure is the most important, and then getting them somewhere for it to be evaluated. One of the vet moms I was talking about earlier gave the best recommendation that I don't think that I've never actually thought about, and now I'm going to encourage every one of y'all to do Saran wrap. If somebody has that in their truck and in their kit, you use it as just a bandage to stop things from bleeding, protection. Or if they get hit in the chest and you want to make sure it's not leaking in. Saran wrap.
Never thought of Saran wrap. We've used all kinds of Lord of mercy. I mean, stuff we ain't even going to talk about, but never Saran wrap. That's awesome because it, like you said, it's designed, to wrap it to wrap and to wrap tightly.
Exactly, and to stay so you're not over there holding it.
Man, yeah, we gotta do the Saran wrap. I gotta have some.
Yeah, gotta get some of that. Y'all put it on your shelves.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's immediate like stop problems. If it's a wound that it's in like over the shoulder and it's now you're not going to be able to know for sure, but it's less obvious that it's in a major abdominal or chest cavity. Flushing it is important, just like we talked about. So if you have like sterile water or sterile saline and you can flush that area, that's encouraged. Now, what I would not flush it with is hydrogen peroxide because it damages the tissue and causes more problems. Yeah. So no, just say no to hydrogen peroxide.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a great thought. I mean, you think about it with your own little cuts, but those are abrasions. Those are things that are not full thickness. You can't mess up, all the other stuff.
But do you know what a great thing peroxide is good for?
What?
If you and all your buddies are out hunting and you ain't got a whole lot going on and you got a little bit of peroxide there, you can take a shot glass of it and see who can drink a shot of it.
That's disgusting.
I'm serious. Get Ryan to try.
They're probably going to throw up. Do they throw up?
Yes, immediately. So don't tell everybody that. That's the best
We
part.
use
Because like as soon as
we
it
use
hits,
these
hey, I'm
stuff with
telling you,
dogs.
it's coming straight out just like a stream. I can't be serious for nothing, can I? I'm sorry.
No,
I'm a horrible
no, but
host.
I hope, yeah, I hope people hear that. Don't do that with you. But yeah,
If
we
you
used
do,
to.
video it.
No, send it in. Let us see. We'll talk about it on the next
Yeah.
podcast. We used to use that for dogs to get them to throw up. There are better ways to do that now, but if they ate something they weren't supposed to do that, so that's a possibility. Fun fact too, if you neuter a cat or a dog and you put that into the testicles, they make great bouncy balls too.
Oh. Well.
So not that anyone out there is gonna be doing that. I don't know, unless you try it with a hog. Unless
I
you
was thinking
train
to
your
say, yeah, we can go try that with a hog.
with a hog.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, sorry, that's off topic.
Dahmer shit y'all talking about?
Listen, Ryan, just go back in there, hide.
Yeah, get out. Yeah, back to punctures.
Yeah.
Flushing them. No hydrogen peroxide. See, it does crazy things. Don't use it for your wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, it's always like going back to Pete's story. It's really important to have somebody evaluate it. I think we often get super lucky because hog dogs are so tough that they make it through without us even doing anything half the time. You know, they're just going to survive. They're survivors. But ultimately, if you have the ability, it's best to have that explored. Now, with punctures, it's not recommended to close them, especially if it's from a dog. Say your dogs are fighting, you should not close dog bite punctures because that just traps the bacteria.
Yep.
So I know a lot of people are out there great with staple guns and even suturing, but I don't recommend closing things like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. I learned that
yeah,
the hard way.
yeah. And
That,
then, oh, go ahead.
no. That's I learned it the hard way from that.
Yeah.
That dog actually bit another dog that I had. And,
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, it was open pretty good. So I said, well, I'll just stick a couple in it just to hold it. And like you said with Stinky Pete, it was literally the next day. I was like, well, it looked pretty good. And then the next day, it was horrible. I mean, it happened so fast.
So fast.
It was ridiculous. And I didn't think, like, I almost lost her.
No, yeah.
It was pretty bad. So
yeah, that's hard. Don't close them. Yeah. I think that's the big things with the punctures that I was thinking about. So, yeah, if they can be explored so they can make sure it doesn't have this giant pocket, which, happens with some of these like tearing injuries, especially when they're stuck on a tusk, they get like flipped around. It's important to have like exit strategies for basically the bacteria and that are going to grow there. And so,
now, how do you feel about blood stop in those situations?
I think
like the blood stop
that I've
powder
used
and
it
stuff.
plenty of times. Yeah. Yeah. With that, like, I mean, obviously I want bleeding to stop. And if that's if there is a lot of blood and we're worried about that, especially if you're going to go somewhere afterwards, that stuff can be cleaned out.
Okay.
It's a perfect no, but if you're driving, like over 30 minutes, hour,
yeah,
and there's
you got to
blood,
do something.
like,
I got
stop
you.
it. Yeah. We'll figure that out later. So
Okay.
I don't have a strong thing against it. I've watched people use it multiple times.
Yeah, I was just curious because I mean it dries hard, and I had one guy I talked to, and he was a vet, and that was the only thing that he ever. I'm not gonna say he even complained about it, but he was like, he said, I wish there was something else they could do. He said because once it dries, some of it dries like concrete, and he said, but generally he just took and just snipped the skin around it, just and went on about his business. So I was just curious on that part.
Yeah, I'm sure I can definitely see it being frustrating when you go to do that. But like, I mean, at the same time, so it'd be a dog that has no blood. So
yeah,
in that scenario, I think if it's that bad, blood stop wouldn't stop it though. To be truthful. So yeah, I think it's fine. I don't really have a strong preference for or against it. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what about heat stroke? That's another thing that we deal with. Dogs overheating a good bit.
Yeah, I think it's just important to recognize like the signs of it. And I think a lot of times people do think about the heat and y'all try to hunt around it, trying to do it in the nighttime is a big thing, or super early morning. But basically heat stroke is it's just that the temperature is way too high, and we know that, but that can be like anywhere above 105 degrees. Dogs' normal temperature is around 100 to 102. But if they're out exercising and they start to increase over 105, and mainly we start seeing major problems after 106 degrees internal temperature, then they're sick, and it's emergent. And so recognizing obviously what it's like outside, making sure your dogs have places to cool down, a lot of water available, places to be out of the sun, and then frequent breaks. Some of those you can't stop because they're just going to keep running. But prevention is super important in heat stroke, because the problem is once we get to that point, it's really hard to save them.
Yeah.
So when you are out in the field, the most important thing to do before you take them to a vet is to cool them down. That's like number one thing. So if you recognize the signs of heat stroke, which a lot of times, depending on the severity, like excessive panting, if we're to that point and somebody has a thermometer and you can check and their temperature's high, then you know the answer, you know where you're at. You start the process of cooling them down, which we'll talk about. But some of the really severe signs are vomiting, diarrhea, when they're out running around. They almost look drunk, like they're walking around and they look drunk. That can be a sign of that. Obviously, that can be a sign of multiple things. But if it's super hot and all this happens, there's kind of a link. Muscle tremors, hypersalivation, all that stuff, severe things, collapsing, loss of consciousness, seizures. Really, but those are really bad scenarios. But if you recognize that they're overheated, so definitely over the temperature of 100, I would say 104, and they're out running around, you need to actively cool them and fast. And so big things are water. So cool water, not necessarily frozen or ice water, because there have been some problems with ice that we'll get to too, but cool water and fans. So whether you have box fans, which would be weird for y'all to have out in the hunt, or your air conditioning, that is really important. So just trying to get them cooled down fast while you're on the way somewhere, because you want them to be managed on IV fluids and stuff to help cool them down faster. But the highest success rate in heat stroke animals are dogs that have already been cooled down and are at a normal temperature by the time they get to the clinic. So that is so vital for you guys. So having water available, having shaded spots for them, not only to like rest on their own, but also when you're parking your trucks and stuff, like recognize that you need to allow wind through y'all's dog kennels, right? And good circulation, and then shade. That's important. Maybe not parking behind another running truck.
Yeah, that's tough sometimes when you're trying to stop and get lunch or whatever.
Oh, yeah, parking lots, and there's nothing.
Waffle House doesn't have any shade hardly at all, but
exactly. We all should be going at midnight anyway, right? It's Waffle House.
A lot of times, I mean, but there's one Waffle House, and I will give a shout out to that one down there in Northport. We have staked our dogs out under their decorative trees right there in the front.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they don't say nothing. Yeah, they're fine. But you got to think. You got to think, like you said. You got to think ahead about it, and having dogs in a box, and if and you're not thinking about it, and you just stop and have an hour-long sit down, and you go in there and you cool down yourself and get something to eat or whatever, and they're sitting out in the parking lot, man, they can get hot quick. Yeah,
exactly. So just, kind of prevention is big, but cooling them down, active cooling is so important. And then there's been a lot of back and forth, honestly, in human medicine about cooling down heat stroke victims, I guess. And so it used to be ice baths, then it kind of went away from ice baths because of basically vasoconstriction. So you can't, it'll take away all of the possibility of getting rid of that heat in your extremities, and it traps the heat on the most important parts like your heart and your liver and your intestinal tract and stuff. So you run the risk of overheating yourself even more and overcooking those internal organs. So they kind of moved away from the ice, but now they're kind of coming back to ice in humans. So as far as vet med, we're still kind of avoiding ice, depending on the ER you go to. They may throw your dog in an ice bath, depending on how hot it is. At that point, you're just trying to get them where they need to go. But out in the field, I wouldn't like lay your dog on a mountain of ice. You know what I mean? I would try to cool them down if possible with cold water and your air conditioning.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. So, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say a fun thing. Another vet mom told me was there's some things that there are, I guess, hunters out there teaching their dogs to dunk their own heads, like in water with treats, so they cool themselves down. So, like if you're worried about them overheating, they'll just teach them to dunk themselves underwater, so you're not like running the risk of them drowning when you're dumping them in water. I know.
That's
so
cool.
I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know how to teach dogs to do that, but
yeah, mine can't do a whole lot of nothing.
I won't even see it. So. Exactly.
If mine dunks his head in the water, it's because he fell off the boat. That's the only reason that dog's dunking his head in the water. But
yeah.
Now we hunt in a lot of hills, mountainous areas, and we have had to deal with fractures and broken bones. What can you do to get, if you got a dog that broke his leg or his foot or whatever, something that you can do to get it going?
Yeah. So the main thing is, like, y'all are going to be useless if you're hurt, so don't get bit. If they're going to be painful if they're broken. So get the other dogs away from them, get things squared away that you need to get. And then if you're able and you have something equivalent to a splint, whether it's a thick stick or you have something in your, like PVC pipe or something like that, if you can stabilize that leg and try to get it to where it's not moving around a lot, which is even more painful, and you have maybe that saran wrap again, I think that's great to try to stabilize them, to get them where they need to go. And so if it's like a leg or something, that's a little bit easier depending on the personality of your dog, but stabilize it and then just get them somewhere that they can get pain meds started. Because I think a lot of times I know the pain control that we're going to have access to, whether it's out in the field or just as like a typical dog hunter, you're not going to have a lot of that strong stuff that they're going to need to feel comfortable. So, so I would say, I think a lot of people have like decks, the steroids and stuff, and we like to reach for that a lot. But it can interfere, especially if you give too much of it, with the other pain control that you'll get later. So,
so decks can interfere with the pain control?
So it'll basically cause problems if you're using it in conjunction with other meds. So like if you're using a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, but you've been using steroids for a while, you can't easily switch over to that non-steroidal because unlike humans, they can't use a steroid and an NSAID at the same time. Okay. Or they can have stomach ulcers, so they can get really sick. It can mess their intestinal tract up, and then you have a whole different ballgame that you got to worry about. So it's nice if you have a fresh, clean palate to work with where you're not like, well, we have to wait 2 or 3 days or give them a ton more meds to protect this GI tract to switch them to something different. It doesn't interact with most of them. So like your opioids and stuff like that, that'll probably be used for pain control. It really won't mess with that, but steroids can also interfere with healing. So can non-steroidals, but a little bit more so with our steroids. So that can cause some problems too.
Cool. All right, now I got a couple for you that aren't on here.
Okay.
And these are simple things, but I feel like they're a real common thing. One would be dealing with like flies on a dog's ears, and I know you've seen that. And then dogs that have that'll bust the tip of their tail just from wagging it. Bird dogs are real bad about it.
Happy tail.
Yeah, happy tail. Okay. What can and then maybe skin abrasions or irritations. What's the best thing to use on those? Give us some stuff on that.
Yeah, I guess I'll work backwards. So the skin stuff, I mean, there's a lot of topical things out there, and that not all necessarily you need your vet for, which I hate to say because I want to be there to help. But like there are topical medications out there like that you can use just to prevent infection and stuff on these skin scrapes, while that should just allow them to heal. So, you think about like a triple antibiotic that we'll put on ourselves. for some of those, like Neosporin or whatever.
Yeah.
Technically that's something, as long as they're not eating it, I'm okay with on smaller wounds. Cleaning it with like a dilute betadine or something will help treat any secondary infections and prevent those while it tries to heal. And so those are definitely easy options for some of those things. If there's inflammation somewhere, like the paw pads are red and inflamed from running around, but not necessarily like worn down or anything, Epsom salt soaks are really good for a lot of that. Even thinking of like your itchy dogs that maybe got into grass and they're chewing on their paws and stuff, or those little annoying grass lines that we talked about earlier. Those Epsom salts to try to pull those out. Just don't let them drink it, or their diarrhea will be awful because it's a laxative too. But those are just like things that you might have at your house that you can treat. Those kind of things with. So pretty simple. Does that cover like what you're thinking about?
That's what it was. Is some of these more like, I guess you'd say more like at home remedy stuff that us guys and gals can do, ourselves. That, unless it gets to a certain point, then of course it'll need veterinary, attention. But just some stuff like that to kind of, like I said, the happy tail thing. We do a lot of crosses with bird dogs, and man, it's horrible. Like we started, docking and go to a veterinarian to get any docks done. So my personal veterinarian, he docked their tails a little bit, but I hate to have to dock them if you don't have to, but the ones that have a lot of bird dog in them, English pointer especially, like the tips of their tails it's bad. So I mean, what do you do when if you get one that's popped and getting blood slung everywhere, and the dog's still just happy and smiling?
Gosh, yeah. So you're not talking about like after. Are you talking about after docks with that, or just in general? These
just
dogs
in general, before, not after docks, but
because that might need different treatment. Yeah. So they have the unfortunate name of happy tail because, I mean, obviously dogs are happy and that's why they're whacking them on things, but they destroy me. They are so frustrating, even in like the actual vet office to treat. That's probably one of the worst things I could see on my schedule is, happy tail. So the important thing obviously is just make sure there's no signs of infection. And so like if you're not seeing obvious like pus or things like that, and there's no obvious bone present, because that's a big deal, and that usually needs amputation. But we're trying to avoid that in the long run. Trying to just cushion that tail with some kind of protection and prevent that dog from slinging it around is mainly the best thing that you do. If there's any pain, like there are some pain meds that maybe we can talk about, but ultimately, like for the most part, it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but it's mainly just protecting it from happening again. So we have like these little happy tail contraptions at our clinic at least. And those like Chinese finger traps where you put your finger on each end and you have to so they look a lot like that, but mesh. And so what we do is we'll put some kind of like ointment, whether it's like a mild steroid ointment or like the triple antibiotics or something like that, just to prevent infection. We'll put that there. Blood stop, I guess, is an option in that scenario too, because it's bleeding everywhere. You can do that just like that powder. Cornstarch, if you are in a pinch, I would say works very much similar. And then, those little gauzes that I'm sure a lot of people have in their little packs.
Yeah.
So wrapping those up pretty deep so that you can't see that tail end anymore is good. So you're kind of just trapping that and covering it. And then a bandage. So those, I don't know why I just forgot what they were called, like that stretch gauze kind of thing.
Yes.
So wrapping that tail as high as you can go to prevent it from slipping off is kind of like the easiest way to do it. I've also heard of people doing pool noodles. So there is a video out there of a person that cuts the noodle in like a spiral cut almost. So they can take it and they can wrap it from the start of the tail all the way down, and you let it go a little bit past the end of the tail as protection. And then they have a way, I think they have like the first part of it attached like with stretch gauze or some kind of other thing to the collar, like up near his neck, and then wrap around. And so sometimes it'll like wrap the tail kind of close to the side of its body, so it's not hitting any walls or anything, and it's protected with a cool noodle.
That's pretty cool.
I know, it's very creative, and I like that idea because the whole goal is just to give it time to heal, and usually skin takes like 7 to 10 days to heal. And if you just give them that time without it being hit one more time, it should be healed. But that's the problem, is that they'll hit it 3 days in.
That's right. That is a huge problem.
That's exactly it.
We found one product that works extremely well. It's just the antiseptic spray. Spurs Big Fix. It's actually made here in Alabama, in Tuscumbia, Alabama.
That's nice.
Started out, it's got like a lot of tea tree oil, just different things in it, but it works so effectively. And I mean, that's just something that we keep in our bag, our kit. But we have to deal with that so much. Like, we've been at wit's end over a period of years. It's like, I've tried everything, and that's really what works the best for us. But you still they have to have enough time to heal. Like you said, that's the biggest problem.
The main thing with it.
That's the biggest problem is them taking that enough time to actually heal. It's like trying to tell a grown man, hey, you're going to be, you got a broke leg. You're going to be in a cast, and you cannot walk on it for 8 weeks. I guarantee you he's not going to make it 8 weeks. And that's exactly the problem. that's the problem.
And with dogs, you can't tell them nothing. They ain't going to listen anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what about the ears? Kind of the same kind of deal. Most of it, that would fall under like the skin irritations, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. So and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm over here looking stuff up as far as like fly control for dogs, because a lot of it I worry is not safe. Because we think a lot about like the large animal stuff, and some of the stuff they use, like the permethrin and things like that, can be dangerous. So there are some out here when I'm looking that are marketed for dogs, like flies off, kills fleas, lice, ticks. I don't, there's a lot of things out there. Are they getting just bit because of like little gnats? Because I don't see that here.
Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of deer flies in certain areas. And then there's also the gnats, the little no-see-ums, the little biting bugs.
Right, which I don't have here.
Mosquitoes and stuff like. We call them no-see-ums because like you cannot see them. They're so small and they will eat you alive. I mean, they can be horrible. And I don't know, like, since we started with especially with the cur dogs, for a long time I ran the German Hunt Terriers, the Yog Terriers, and Airedales, a lot of dogs with wire coats and broken coats, So it wasn't as prevalent in them. Once we got to the cur dogs, they're all a lot smoother coat, finer hair.
Right. It's easier to get to this.
Yes, we deal with the ear problems, and it's like I said, it's mostly just from flies or whatever, gnats, bugs. I don't know what all it is. I know they make some products, some ointments. We use SWAT. We use that a lot. But we get questions all the time from listeners, and they ask us about it. So that's why I wanted to see if you had any input on it.
I think I have a little bit. So first, a lot of those bugs like to go near like moist things anyway. So making sure your dogs don't have like ear infections is a big thing. Making sure their environment is more dry as best as you can. I know, like, we just like to spray down our kennels, and that leaves water, and that allows them to grow, and then or to kind of want to stay in that area. And then like our setup, we have a runoff where all like the poop and the pee and all that stuff goes, but it kind of stays close to our kennels, which can provide a perfect place for flies. And so I think a big thing would be trying to make sure that's not so close, so that they don't have that environment that they want to live in and multiply. And then have these perfect little things to bite right near them. And then just making sure like any wounds on these dogs are well taken care of, because obviously a lot of them are going to have wounds, and there's a lot of fly action there. So like going back to Pete, I was super worried about it's gross, but like maggots in these wounds, and
Mhm.
again these flies. So I think there are ways for the natural ways for you to take care of flies. Anyways, a lot of cattle people have those fly traps and stuff. So doing that, and there's repellents that you can do as long as these dogs aren't getting to those specific repellents. I think that's fine. So like if there's an environmental things that you can do, like I don't know. I know people will do like Ron was talking about how people would do the cattle
The tags.
cattle tags. Yeah, I
Yes.
think you have to be careful because depending on what's on those, they can be toxic to the dogs. If other dogs are eating them or they eat them, they can get really sick or
Yes.
die.
Well, we've
So,
had dogs. We had one that was addicted to cattle tags, the purple ones. And I'm serious. Her name was Little Bacon. And the first time
or
it
they,
happened, I thought she was dying. I was like, "Oh my god, oh no!"
yeah,
And she's stumbling around. She's lethargic.
yeah,
She's foaming at the mouth. And her little nub back there, she had a little dock tail, all the little terriers,
yeah,
and she's just wagging her tail. I was like, "This dog is stoned. Something's
yeah,
wrong. Like she's high, something."
yeah.
Well, sure enough, you could see where she had actually got her cattle tag, and so we wound up folding them over and putting zip ties on. That way, they were attached to the collar as well.
Okay.
Just wrapped around it. And
Yes,
this dog would keep on until she
you
could
got
get,
it.
yeah,
I love that feeling. So I
yeah.
just loved it.
She was like, "I feel
Goodness.
so good. I feel so
Oh my
good."
gosh. Well, yeah, I'd be hard, that I'd be worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm also a little worried, but that scares me. But yeah, I mean, if there's a way to like try to use some of those medications around the area, but not in the area, so they
Mhm.
don't um, get sick from it, is good. But I was actually, and again, not gonna lie, I was just looking some stuff up, and I forgot about some of these over-the-counter stuff that may be not great for fleas and tick control, but they're labeled for mosquito prevention and biting flies. It literally has biting flies on there. So
Okay.
Canine Advantix. I'm
Really?
sure, like, yeah, I'm sure everyone's heard of that.
Yeah.
If not, I mean, it's very easy to find. So Canine Advantix, and then Frontline. I'm about to look at that one too. So another over the counter thing. It says something about chewing lice, but I don't see anything about like the flies and stuff.
Huh.
But so yeah, I would say with y'all, I would encourage somebody to try the Canine Advantix too, number 2. It
Okay.
looks like it has.
We might try that because we got one area. Well, I say area. It's in a general area, of course. There's
Yeah,
several dogs that we keep there, and usually one dog out of that area will have it worse than the others.
yeah,
So we might just go ahead and give that a try. Just
yeah.
be a test
It's like
subject.
$18 on Amazon for the
Okay.
large size. So pretty inexpensive, and technically helps you cover fleas and ticks too. So
Well,
as long as they're
that's
not
a big help.
resistant, and
Yeah.
lice. That's gross. That happens in
Yeah.
kennels.
I
So
mean, sometimes dogs get lice. I guess I don't know.
they do.
I've never had the dog. My dogs have never had lice that I know about. They've never
Yeah.
even been accused of it. But I mean, I don't know. So, what kind of controversial opinions do you have on vet medicine, if you have
like,
any at all?
do I have, or
Yeah.
do I feel like other people
Do
have?
you have, and what have you dealt with from other people as well? You know what I mean? Like we were talking about a while ago about the snake bite stuff and some of those stuff. Some give us some kind of controversial stuff.
I feel like I did
We can't
something.
have it all roses.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, some of that I sprinkled in earlier about like,
Yeah. What's some
things like that.
disagreements? Yeah.
Okay, so some of them, I guess, when people come in, and some things that we like to, I won't say roll our eyes, it sounds like we don't listen to people, but like we, start questioning. And I think maybe one of y'all brought it up earlier. Raw diets,
Mm-hmm.
kind of controversial. And it kind of goes back to, we think like, again, they're born to eat this stuff, but it's just gross. And I say that like, you gotta manhandle nasty raw foods, and there's like risk of you getting sick from it,
Yeah.
and then your dogs, if maybe hog dogs aren't cute, giving a lot of kisses. I don't know. Our dogs do, but like they're kissing on you, or there's that bacteria in their poop and stuff. Like you just run the risk of getting sick. Plus, it just stinks. So, I mean, that's that's one little controversial thing I think that some people are really all about. And I mean, more power to you. Just clean up.
Yeah,
Really.
there's some people that are die hard on it. I mean, like
Yes.
I don't care what it is. Their dog's not eating any kibble. It's going to be T-bone steaks
And it's gonna be raw.
whatever. They get carried away with it.
Yeah. Okay. That's one.
Okay.
I think one Ryan kind of just hinted at too, and it's kind of come along. I think a lot of the times I get it. Actually, I'm getting it from all kinds of people nowadays. Is there's an abortion shot for dogs. People want kind of a quick fix for their dog's locked up and they didn't want those two to lock up, or
Yes.
Whatever. There's not. I mean, there is. Technically, there is. But I'm going to have, if you ask me for that, I'm going to send you to a specialist in like theriogenology, and you're going to go talk to them because there are so many risks that come from that shot.
Really?
You could lose your dog ultimately anyway. Yeah, like they could get an infection of their uterus. They could, pass away from that. That's an emergency thing. And then it may not even work. There's just so many risks to that. At that point, I would say if you didn't want that litter, then you spay your dog. And that's kind of the end of it, because there's just too many dogs out there, and I know a lot of y'all are, wanting to create your own bloodlines they're good, but ultimately in the end, like and I know there are accidents, I know, and that's kind of where this controversy comes into this, but like, if it was let happen, then there was something done wrong, and ultimately it's not that dog's fault. Don't put that dog through something that could hurt her more. You just spay her, or if it's safe, let her have those puppies. And well, I'm not gonna say that we should get rid of puppies, but but if you do it,
buckets. Listen.
Yes. Yeah. There is. I mean, spaying them.
You can give the puppies to your hunting friends.
Yeah, say they partially come from a good line. Maybe the dad wasn't that great or something, but I don't know. But I mean, technically, getting rid of doing a spay is abortion. But if you do it early enough, like it's just safer. And I don't want to promote something that's such a hard topic in today's society for humans too. Like I don't even want to get into that. But it's hard on animals because we have way too many and they can't take care of themselves. It's different. So. So that one's a hard one. Yeah. So if you don't want to like keep your dog separate, then just get them neutered and spayed so that you won't.
Like you said, I mean, accidents happen. We've had them right here, but the general consensus of it is just like, okay, well, we just have to see how they turn out. We've got a litter right now that was not a planned litter, but at the same time, it's like, the dogs that we own are all of a better caliber dog. So it's like, it's not going to be a bad deal. It might just not be what we planned.
What you had wanted.
But initially. It's not the dog's fault. It's my fault because I didn't have it. I didn't have the dog situated the way it should be, or I didn't notice that she was in heat quick enough.
Yeah.
Now there are some dogs. Rodney Bell owned 2 of them. He's got, one of them she passed this year. Her name was Midnight, and that dog would breed at the drop of a hat, whether she was in heat or not.
Oh goodness!
Have you ever seen a dog like that?
No, I have seen. There are some dogs out there that go into more heat cycles than others, and there's some like you feel like they never go into heat.
Yeah.
They typically have something else going on with them. But no, I mean I haven't really seen any bred outside of a known heat cycle.
That was, I'm telling you now, and not like she would not be in heat. She wouldn't even have puppy, wouldn't be pregnant, nothing. You would go out there and she would just be locked up. And you're like, what is happening? And then 2 months later, she would come in heat and she wouldn't let nothing breed her. I have no idea. But then again, it was Rodney's dog, and most of the listeners out there, you all guys know Rodney.
We love Rodney.
He's a little promiscuous, so you got to watch him. And it rubbed off on his dogs. I think that's what happened, y'all.
Oh gosh.
So for people who have dogs that don't come in heat on a regular cycle, or that have I don't know. We've had a couple over the years that, man, if they came in heat at all, you better be watching, because it only lasted just a couple of days. It wasn't like most dogs where had all that. Is there a medication that you can put them on, or is it hormone imbalance, or is it something to do with that?
Yeah, there's nothing. I can't remember who asked me about this. I think it was one of the bay competitions. Somebody asked me about medications to help dogs come into heat. There's nothing that I recommend for that, because I think that if they're not coming into heat the way they're supposed to, some of them have shorter heat cycles than others. And and I know I'm talking to a group of men right now, but like that's same with humans. There are so many different ways for that to happen. But in dogs, if they're not coming into heat, there's something underlying that's wrong. And that is like, that can open up a whole can of things as far as that goes. But some of the basic things is their nutrition's not right. They have to have the right nutrition, and they have to be healthy, or they're not going to come into heat. If they're underweight, then they're not going to have a heat cycle, because they need to focus on keeping themselves alive, not pregnancy. So that's one thing. Intestinal parasites, again, it kind of comes back to the nutrition. If they're not getting that because of some other illness, they're not going to come into heat. Some dogs have like low thyroid levels. It's not super common, but it's common enough that if there's problems with their thyroid gland, they're not going to come into heat. And so you have to regulate that first. And, that might take a little bit more digging, but that's worth it if it's a good dog, right?
Yes.
And then other things, infectious diseases. And so with what you are dealing with, and again, like especially like with bay dogs and stuff, they try to take a handle on this, but brucellosis, those are things that cause, maybe these dogs come into heat but can't keep a pregnancy. Those are things you have to consider. And that's another thing that comes, that can be zoonotic and can affect humans and can make us really sick. And so whenever you're talking about breeding dogs, it's nice if you can get them tested for those things, especially if you don't,
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to another place or kennel to get your dog to match them. They need to be tested, both of them.
Yes. I know most breeders that I know, if you have a female, she has to be tested brucellosis negative before they'll even, don't even bring her over unless you're tested.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
with all these dogs around. Exactly.
Because it's a lot more common than people think.
It is.
Just because you don't know it and you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yes, that's exactly right. When I was in vet school, we had a dog come in and tested positive for brucellosis. And his was from cows, actually. So, but yeah, it was on my rotation in theriogenology, and it just stinks because it just opens up so many problems for the owners and that dog, and their life in general. That's hard. That's a hard disease. So yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's. Do you have any other stuff to play off of the things that we've talked about on here so far?
I have one more controversial thing. It's not necessarily about pet owners, though.
No, that's fine. It can be about Ryan.
Yeah, it's about Ryan. No, it's about veterinary medicine in general.
Okay.
And really, I had a hard week, and I've actually had a hard time in these past 5 years of being a vet, because I hinted at it at the beginning. When I was little, I was like, I'm just going to be a vet. I'm going to play with animals. And that is not at all the case. I do play with animals. If you get on my Instagram, most of the things I post are me with puppies. When I finally get to see a puppy, most of the time I'm seeing super sick things. And it's hard because it's just a hard job. And it's hard because a lot of people out there think that we're in it for the money. And we're not. Well, I won't lie. Part of it is because anybody that has a job is in it for the money. You don't go to work because you the whole do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life is not real. Maybe for someone out there, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're going to work. I promise you.
it's still work. Yeah. So we have one of the highest suicide rates in all of the fields, like in all of the jobs in the careers. We do. I think honestly, the last time I checked, the highest was dentistry. And I've talked to my dentist. I've asked them about that because that one kind of threw me for a loop. But next is veterinary professionals, and it's not just the vets; it's the people like that work at the job. So the vet assistants and people that see all of this firsthand. And a lot of it comes from there's so much hate towards the profession because we charge for what we do. And we get it. Like my worst nightmare is someone comes in and they want me to help their pet and they have no money. Like I promise you, I will cry. It might be in the room, it might be in my office, it might be to Ryan later, but it breaks my heart because that is obviously why we're in this profession. And maybe we say it's for the animals, but a lot of us are also in it to love the humans. And so whenever we get whenever people talk to us about like we're too much, we get yelled at because you just want money. You don't want to fix my pet. It just breaks you. And so at some point you're just like, I don't even want to do this anymore. And then unfortunately we have people that will take their own lives because of the heartbreak of that. And then also just of student loans, because our student loans are massive. So you're paying to go to school as long as a human doctor, granted without some of the residencies and stuff. Which you could go through as a vet, but you don't get paid well at all compared. And y'all can look it up as the average, but it's nice. I won't say it's bad, but it's definitely not stuff to cover your loans and also life. And so it just hurts when people tell you that you're in it for the money. And so the controversy is like I want people to know that we do have to pay the bills. AKA keep the lights on at the clinic and pay the people that are holding your dog and talking to you about medications and stuff. But just with any profession, there's obviously bad apples out there, but a majority of the vets want to help. Whether it's they want to help your pet, maybe they're not so into you, but a lot of us are meant to love you and your pet. So when you guys come in, there's some controversy about what you guys do, but I encourage you to find a vet that understands and is there to help you guys. But if there ever is a time where you feel like that fit is not there for you, then you don't necessarily have to tell them in a way that's hurtful. You can just say, thank you for your time. And then you find somebody else, that works with you in a better way. So it's a lot harder than it sometimes is made out to be, especially in situations where somebody can't afford or just refuses to do anything for their dog and they walk out the door with their dog half dead. When when it could have been let go humanely, because death is an okay option if nothing else can be done. It's okay to let your dogs go. And that's something I deal with pretty much every day, is letting an animal go in a safe way, with euthanasia. But ultimately, I think the biggest controversy is that people don't like vets because they think that we don't love their pets just because we have to get paid for what we do. And it's just an unfortunate way of life. I'd love for you to bring me ice cream and then I do it, whatever for your pet. I would totally take that if I didn't have to pay for Ryan's chucks that he always is buying. I'm just kidding.
But it's, and I don't know, I kind of, that really just kind of just a little gut check there for me myself, because I've never looked at it like that, as far as from that perspective is like, you love the humans and deal with the human interaction. Because ultimately that's who's doing the talking. That's who's doing the paying, loving the pets and the animals. Everything you just said, like it really just kind of hit me a little different there. Because I personally know this guy here in Jasper, and he's come by our store a few times, and I've given him things, and he's never asked for anything for free. But he has a bulldog that is one of the finest specimens of a dog that I've ever seen. I've tried to buy this dog multiple times. This man is homeless.
Oh.
And I watched him one day take one bite of a sandwich and give the dog the whole sandwich.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I was like, holy smokes. And like I said, I tried to buy the dog. I was like, dude, this thing is nice, and he was like, yeah, he said, well, he was down on his luck. He said, I found him over in a place I was sleeping and it was behind a dumpster, and it's like, is this even for real? And this dog looks, Nate knows what I'm talking about, rides the bicycle all the time. This dog, I'm telling you now, I know people that put
It looks great.
so much time and effort to get their dogs to look like this. And this man
Yeah.
does it. He doesn't even have a place to sleep. So what is your excuse?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's making me cry. I mean, I see people like that all the time. And I've had moments where, this one lady just like completely like just broke my heart. She came in and all she wanted to do was take care of her dog, who had horrible skin, sweetest little tiny thing. And she looked at me, and that was my gut check moment. She looked at me and she said, the total, like, some of the stuff we talked about was a couple $100. And she looked at me and she goes, I think I can do that. And I was like, okay. And she goes, I just got back to work and I got a new job. And she was like, and so I get paid, she said, I get paid $700 next week. And she was like, that's my, every 2 weeks I get paid. And I just looked at her and I was like, okay. And she said, right now I have about 150. And she was like, so just keep it at 150. And I looked at her and I said, is the 150 your entire budget, like for you and this dog, or just your dog? And she kind of stopped and she looked at me. She goes, for us. And I was like, well, man, we're not doing that today. And so I said, we're going to treat what we know we can treat, at whatever cost. I'll call stuff up to a human pharmacy. We're going to get like what we can done today, so that your dog can get, better. Yeah. But it breaks my heart knowing there are people out there that will give absolutely every cent they have to make their dog better. And then there are some people that come up in a Cadillac or whatever, and they're like, no, you can't do this $5 test. Like, that's too expensive, and yell at us. And so, my goodness, it just, vet med is really not, I mean, you are in it for the pets, but you've got to have so much love and acknowledgement for the owners. So
I'm glad, I'm so thankful we got to have this conversation, this interaction, because like I said, all the things that you talked about and opened up and told us, on the medical side of it is going to help hundreds of people, if not thousands, across the world. We have listeners in, I don't know, 40 something countries, maybe, or more now.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we've grown a lot, but then, like you said, the last thing I thought was going to be one of those questions we were going to get some razzle dazzle from you, about, just but it really, I don't know, like I said, it just really was a gut check for me. We just don't think about it like that. And you're right. People, I know people, and I've even been there myself, where I'm like, damn, man, they charged me $1,200.
I get it.
And it's, but now honestly, I can say the same thing, because like, if I come and do custom woodwork at your home, or I'll build you a custom dining room table, it's not going to be $50. I promise you.
Right.
And
it shouldn't be.
Exactly, because we get paid for our knowledge.
Yes.
We get paid for what we do, what all the time and effort that it took to get here. That's what we get paid for.
Right.
In the real world, there's a lot of people that don't get paid nowhere near what they're worth, and there's some that get paid way more than what they should, I feel. But
that's not wrong too. Yeah.
But that's just how it goes. But from the bottom of my heart, from all the hog doggers out there, we love you and we thank you for being you, first of all, and then secondly, for being someone who cares about the dogs and the animals and stuff that we love as much. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm here. I'm here to help. Yep. Whether it's at a random hog weigh competition, or I guess out in my yard.
That's right. That's right.
Y'all just let me know.
I wish we had more veterinarians like you, and I'm sure there are, and maybe this will be one of those things where maybe some of our listeners will feel a little more comfortable when they go in there and talk to their vet, and they can have a serious interaction and say, hey, look, this is what's going on with my dog, and realize that you guys are people that are doing a service for us. You're not asking us to come in there. We're coming to you.
Yeah. And we want to be a team. Yes. And that is 99% of people out there. So I encourage and implore people to just be open. Like, if you have a budget, let us know your budget. And
Yep.
and again, 99% of the time, we're going to try to work within that, unless, there's a difference. And we'll talk about why it'd be best if we did something different. But like, we don't want to do extra work either.
That's right.
Like, we're going to do what we know is going to work. And we just want the owners to be happy, and we want the pets to be healthy. So that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Rankin, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for
Yes.
taking your
Thank
time
you.
out of your life. I know you're busy all the time, and then you gotta deal with a husband, kids, pets, all these other things. I mean, I know you're busy as it can get. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And,
It was fun.
yeah, if there's anything that we can do at any time, you already know. All you gotta do is holler at us. Tell Ryan to holler at us, and we'll come run it. If anybody's mean to you at work, just let me know.
Will do.
We'll come see them. All right.
Will do.
So you guys take care, and maybe we'll do this again.
Okay. All right. We all have a good night.
Hey,
And thank you.
appreciate it. You did a great job too. Thanks.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bro, that was awesome. That was a good one.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was a good one. That's probably my favorite one. What do you think?
It's hard to beat. Hard to beat.
That was cool. Hey, I don't even think I even cussed or got out of hand or nothing. Did good. And I even shut the hell up and let her talk. I didn't interrupt a whole lot. I did some, but there's some things in there, though, that were genuinely, I was like, wow. It's good to see that perspective come out.
Yeah.
Because there's so many vets that you're out there and you're like, man, all they worry about is this or that or blah, blah. Or they don't understand what it's like to have these dogs. And having somebody like that, it helps. Like I said, the old school vets that we've talked about in years past, man, there's not a lot of them left. That's why they're old school vets. So now we got some new school vets coming out. Seem like they're pretty cool. If all of them's like that, hell, we might have to start going to the veterinarian, which is something that y'all need to do, listeners. But if you don't, then maybe this helped. Maybe this episode gave you a little bit of insight on some of the things that you can do at home and do for yourself to help you to help you save your dog, or to help keep them healthy, or whatever. And if you got any questions or anything like that, all you got to do is holler at us. And we'll put you in touch with the people that can answer them, because we don't know nothing. Nothing. So, all right. Well, that's another one in the books. That's Dr. Mackenzie Rankin. Maybe if y'all had some questions or some other topics that y'all would like to hear her talk about, send them in to us. Maybe we can get her back on the horn. Maybe she would. I bet you she would entertain those. So
Yes.
till the next time, we appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. And we gone.
Thank you. Hope y'all enjoyed that episode. Stay tuned for our new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. For questions, advertising, or just to chat, email DixieDoggers01@gmail.com.